Hi friends, this is the writing lesson for second grade. We are going to continue our personal narrative writing. Last week we worked on our brainstorm, and today we're going to take that brainstorm and turn it into a rough draft with all the sentences and everything. So this is what you will need. You need your brainstorm, of course, because you don't want to write a whole different story. You will need lined piece of paper, and you will need a pencil. So before we get started, you need to make sure that your paper is the right way. If it has holes, the holes go on the left-hand side, and the big space goes at the top. That leaves enough room for you to put a title. And you're going to start by writing your name in the upper right-hand corner. And then I'm not really quite sure what I want to do for my title yet. If you recall, I wrote that my topic was seeing a bear, but I'm just not sure what I want to do for it yet. So it's totally fine to leave it blank. You're going to leave the space up there anyway, so you can leave it blank and you can go back to it. Something might come to you while you are writing. So if you recall from our last personal narrative, we did an introduction paragraph with our hook and our topic sentence. We did a body paragraph with our details, and then a closing paragraph with our closing sentences. How did we feel? So we're going to do the same thing again. We will have 3 total paragraphs, which means you will be indenting 3 times. So you are welcome to watch this video and then go ahead and write, or you can kind of watch part of it, pause it, then write, watch the next part, pause it, then write, and so on, okay? So you're going to start with your hook. One other important thing to remember is that you need to skip lines. So I like to draw little X's on the lines that I am not going to write on, because that reminds me that I need to go all the way to that red line every time I go to a new line. So for my hook, I said, have you ever seen a bear in the wild? And I like the way that sounds, so I'm just going to keep that as is, and I'm going to write that for my first sentence in my first paragraph. Don't forget, you need to use your 2 fingers to indent, and you're going to do that 3 total times. So there's my first indent. And now I'm going to write the rest of my question. Now remember, when I get to the end of this line and there is no more room, I'm going to go down to the next line. I'm going to make sure I skip a line, and I'm going to go all the way back to that red line to show that it's not a new paragraph. I'm going to make sure that I end this sentence with a question mark, because I am asking a question to my reader. And now I'm ready to write my topic sentence. My topic sentence says, last summer I saw 2 black bears in Truckee with my family while we were eating dinner. So that sounds good as it is. I am going to just leave it. Usually when we write our topic sentence on our brainstorm, it is good to go. So I'm going to write that. I have who I was with, what happened, when it happened, and where it happened. So I'm going to copy that. Now, this is not a new paragraph, so I am just going to write it after a space from my question mark. Now, don't forget that in your topic sentence, you probably have a time order word. And for mine, or a phrase rather, mine is last summer. So that's my time order phrase. And then I have a comma. And I'm at the end of the line, so I'm going to go to the next line, but all the way back to the red line. And now I'm going to fast forward this really quick. Okay, so I finished writing my topic sentence. A couple things that you want to make sure that if you were writing about, if you told about a place that you were and it is a proper noun, you need to make sure that you capitalize it and that you end with a period in your sentence. So now I am done with my introduction and I'm going to now write my body paragraph. And that's where I include all of these details. Okay, so my first detail was that Matt yelled, "Mom, close the door." So I can't just start a paragraph like that because that might sound kind of weird. So I have to think, how am I going to make this sound as if I was telling a story? So if I was telling you the story in real life, I would say, last summer I saw two black bears in Truckee with my family while we were eating dinner. And then I want to say something like, first, or while we were eating dinner, Matt suddenly yelled, or I could say something like, we were enjoying our dinner with the door open when all of a sudden Matt yelled, and then I can finish that. So I have to think, what is going to make it sound the most natural, like I'm telling a story? I don't want to say, first Matt yelled, then Margaret's chair was in the way. That just sounds like kind of boring, right? So you have to think, how is it going to sound if I was just telling you this story instead of writing it? Okay? So I'm going to start my paragraph. So you need to make sure that you indent because this is a new paragraph and you're going to go down to the next line. So no matter where you ended here, I have this whole space. I'm still going to go down to the next line. So I'm going to start out with the word we. Now, I might change that later on because it might seem a little weird, but I'm just going to leave it like that. That's why we go back and we edit and revise so we can change it and make things better. So I'm going to say we, and by we, I mean my family and I already said that up there, were enjoying our dinner when suddenly Matt yelled. Now, here is where I have to add in my dialogue because this part, Matt or Mom, close the door. This is what Matt actually said. And this is why we learned about dialogue last week. So Matt yelled, and that's my speech tag. So I'm going to put a comma. And then I'm going to put my quotation marks, my opening quotation marks. I'm going to write the word mom, and I'm actually going to put an exclamation point. And then I'm going to write close the door. Now, here is where dialogue gets a little confusing. If you added dialogue to your story, you're going to have more than 3 paragraphs. Whenever you have dialogue in a story, it gets to be its own paragraph. So here is my dialogue. So what I'm actually going to do is I need to start a new paragraph. But if you just wrote your first sentence and there's no quotation marks, no dialogue, then you're just going to keep writing in your single paragraph, okay? And if you need help with that, I can help you with that. You can log on to Zoom, no problem at all. So after Matt yells, "Mom, close the door," we were all kind of startled, right? We had no idea what was going on. So I didn't write that on my paper, but I want to add it in my story. So then I'm going to say, everyone started wondering why Matt said that and started looking around. Now, while everyone's kind of like, what's happening? What's going on? What's going on? Margaret is trying to move her chair, right? Remember this? So I can say something like a time order word would be meanwhile. Now, meanwhile is kind of a fancy word. That means while this was happening, something else was happening. And that's what I'm going to write. Again, it might not make sense in your story. So you do what works best for you. You have tons of time order words. You have first, next, then, finally, after that. All of these words can work in your story to make it sound natural. Okay, so meanwhile, comma, Margaret was trying to close the door, comma, but her chair, I'm going to go to the next page on the back, but her chair was in the way. Okay. Then what happens next? Do you remember? Then my sister-in-law pushed her mom out of her chair so she could close the door, right? So I'm going to say, so we said, meanwhile, Margaret was trying to close the door, but her chair was in the way. And I'm going to start a sentence with so. Now, so is not the best way to start a sentence, but you can sometimes start your sentence like that. So, Lauren, that's my sister-in-law, pushed Margaret out of her chair and, this is a compound sentence, so don't forget that comma before your and, closed the door. Okay, so now the door is closed. Here is where in this story we can figure out what is going on. Then we all realized it because we saw the two bears walking through the yard. So I might say something like, finally, we figured out why Matt yelled to close the door. That's what my first part is going to be. So finally, there's my time order word. We all figured out why Matt yelled at his mom. And now this is not dialogue. I'm just kind of recapping what happened. So it says, finally, we all figured out why Matt yelled at his mom. Two black bears slowly wandered through the yard. So there's kind of like my final sentence, okay? Now, I'm going to go back and reread this when I'm editing and revising because that's what you do as a writer. So if it doesn't sound totally perfect right now, that's okay. But once you get done with your body section, you've done all of your details I did mom closed the door. I did that Lauren pushed her mom, and then we saw the cub and the mama. And I kind of changed it a little bit. I might go back and say a mama and a cub. I might change that. I might not. Now I can go to my conclusion. So my closing sentence, my closing paragraph, I said, it was so cool seeing 2 black bears in the wild. I wonder if I will see any bears this summer. So this is a new paragraph. I'm going to indent and I'm going to go down to that next line. So no matter where I ended here, I'm going to go down to the next line. So I'm going to say, it was so cool seeing 2 black bears. And I'm going to say in the wild because I think that adds an extra detail. And then I wonder if I will see any bears this summer when I go to Truckee. Okay. Whew. Now I might add an exclamation point right there because I thought it was really spectacular. So there it is. There is my whole story. And as you saw, I kind of changed things here and there. So when you are writing, remember, it is okay to change things. And my biggest piece of advice is to make sure it sounds like you're telling a story. If you were just telling it instead of writing it, what would it sound like? All right, friends, that is it for our lesson. I will see you guys later.